Hello and welcome to a space where Ayurveda meets Vedic astrology, not as an abstract philosophy, but as a practical wellness system that you can actually use in daily life. Now, this is introduction which will be covered in every podcast. If you have already seen this, you might skip this, but I would urge you to go through each and every one of them. In this podcast, we explore how your natal chart reveals your constitutional tendencies, your Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, the fundamental principles of Ayurveda, how they balance through planetary nature and house activation. The classical dosha mapping examples will also be covered. We will also examine how planets act on specific organs and systems. For example, Sun influencing bones and vitality, Moon governing fluids and mind, Mars driving Pitta, heat and inflammation, and so on. But we don't stop at that. We also explore dietary daily alignment for your wellness, your management system of your daily diet based on Mahadasha and Antardasha, recognizing whether a phase brings more of which energy, Vata increase, Pitta increase, Kapha excess, and so on. These are simple Ayurvedic daily dietary management principles which are the foundational core of wellness. The goal here is simple, it's clarity, it's not fear. We discuss health as a pattern of timing, constitution, and lifestyle interaction. The Mahadasha periods will activate certain planets, and those planets carry specific dosha signatures, and your body expresses that pattern in identifiable ways. Okay, so let us discuss this without further ado. So there are three forces, three principles of life energy in Ayurveda called Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. Vata relates to movement, and all of these principles is prana movement or the life force or the chi energy movement in your body. Prana is the Vedic connotation, so we'll stick to that. Vata is about movement, air energy, so to speak. Pitta is about transformation or the heat, prana converting it to something. Kapha is structure or prana stabilizing energy. The whole goal of Ayurveda is to keep these three principles of life energy and the way it moves in perfect balance. It's not to get rid of something. Ayurveda does not work like that. It is to keep these three forces in balance. Now, I shall be doing this in the presentation style, which is typical to my channel. So if you would see it in your laptop or your tablet, I would advise that because this will be a presentation style. What is Vata? What is the Vata principle of movement? The core is the breath, in and out breath, the nerve impulses, the circulation, the prana flowing, energy in motion. It is air plus ether, prana in motion. Let's look at the elemental nature, air plus ether. Vata is dry, light, cold, subtle, and mobile. Think of the air and ether energy. It is very penetrative. At the prana level, Vata is prana in motion. Without Vata, nothing moves, not even thought. When balanced, it can lead to creativity, clarity, quick perception, adaptability, and healthy elimination. When disturbed, the symptoms would appear as bloating, as constipation, as tremors, as insomnia, as anxiety-like instability. The Vata imbalance is essentially disturbed prana flow. That's Vata. What about Pitta? The principle of transformation, the core underlying principles being digestion and metabolism, temperature control, hormonal conversion, prana converting something. It's the energy conversion principles. Fire plus water. It's the prana converting something. It's needed. All three are needed. The elemental nature of Pitta is fire plus water. Think like Scorpio, for example. Hot, sharp, penetrating, intense, slightly oily in nature. At the prana level, Pitta is the prana that transforms. It converts food into energy. It converts experience into understanding. When balanced, it gives you strong digestion, sharp intellect, healthy ambition, radiance, and good metabolism. Of course, all of us will need that. When disturbed, however, the signs could include burning sensation, yellow discoloration, excessive thirst, more inflammation, reduced sleep, and so on. We shall see this in details. Too much pitta is excessive heat in the body. What about kapha? The principle of structure and stability. The core underlying principle here being body structure, immunity, lubrication and growth, and prana converting in something where it can hold. Kapha holds things. Water plus earth principle. It's a stabilizing principle. The elemental nature is water plus earth, heavy, slow, cool, stable, soft, and cohesive. At the prana level, kapha is the prana that holds structure together. It's the glue of life. When balanced, strong immunity can result, emotional calm, endurance, healthy mass, body mass, not excessive fat, for example, deep sleep. When disturbed, it could lead to some things like heaviness, excessive sleep, coldness, and weak digestion. It's a stagnation of prana principle. So we also bring in later on in these wellness podcasts planetary doshas. Okay, what planets represent what kind of doshas typically? I shall cover this in detail also. The sun represents pitta, the central heat, the authority, the inflammatory principle. The moon represents Vata and Kapha together, depending upon case to case. It's the fluid plus emotional oscillation. Mars represents Pitta, that is aggressive inflammation. Mercury represents Tridoshik, that means all three doshas, depending upon case to case. Remember, I spoke of Mercury as a imitator planet, depending upon where it's placed with whom is it sitting, conjunctions, and so on. It's the principle of nervous adaptive instability. The Jupiter is Kapha 100%, expansion and accumulation. It's the fat principle. Venus is Kapha and Vata, both put together. It's the fluid and reproductive indulgence principle. Saturn is Vata 100%. It's degeneration and chronic dryness. Saturn is a dry planet. Airy. Rahu will be Vata-ish principle, Rahu and Ketu both, but Rahu is amplified abnormality. In uncontrolled expansion is Rahu. Ketu is uncontrolled contraction, deficiency, and severance. So we shall deal with that as well as we go forward. How do you deal with these podcasts? Okay, you should open your natal chart, which is a representation of your lifelong care and balance points needed in how you manage your daily diet, depending upon wherever the natal chart is and how it is covered. We shall take case studies later on. Number two, Mahadasha Antardasha, you got to check which Mahadasha, which Antardasha you are running, because the activation will be as per your Mahadasha Antardasha, currently whatever you are running, and whichever planets are associated. So you might think of those particular points as activation points for your doshas as the activation ages for the individuals to consider. Number three, this podcast is about wellness. It's about daily dietary care and taking care of the Vata, Pitta, and Kapha principles. Okay? And the doshas associated. And to consider them accordingly. How do you want to tune your daily diet? That's what this is all about. And we should take that also into consideration, taking the classical Ayurvedic texts and which foods, native foods to Indian subcontinent give more Vata, Pitta or Kapha. Okay? And we'll relate it to Vedic astrology. So welcome and let's see what we get. Now when you talk of wellness and when you talk of planets in the natal chart, you got to have some general attributes always, okay? So now let's speak of Mars. Mars means muscles. Think of muscles whenever you think of Mars. Think of blood. Think of heat in the body. Mars is a pure Pitta planet, just like Sun is. It stands for minerals in the body. It stands for bone marrow. It stands for dryness because Pitta has a tendency to dry up stuff. Anything hot will dry up the wet stuff, isn't it? Physics. It stands for chest. It stands for overheating. It stands for fevers of all kinds, particularly eruptive fevers. You know, the boils that you get on skin, that kind of excessive heat, which is drying up the liquids in the body. It stands for liver-related complaints. It stands for skin rashes. It stands for ulceration of all kinds. It stands for lacerations of all kinds. operations or surgeries of all kinds. It might lead to, in a particular Antardasha, for example, and all sorts of acute complaints, really. Mars is about acute complaints, boils of all kinds. It also stands for sight, it also stands for pungent flavors. Why am I saying all this? These are the generic attributes of planet action on the body. Now let's look at this. What does it increase? Mars as a Pitta planet, what does it tend to increase? Okay. So Mars tends to increase heat just like Sun. You will see the similarities between Mars and Sun, of course. Mars is more action oriented, Sun is more static. Think of it that way. Increases the blood pressure. Like I said, Mars is blood. So if there is excessive Mars movement in your system, let's say if Mars is in your ascendant particularly, or if it's in fire signs like Aries, Leo, Sagittarius, for example, the heat is quite turned on, isn't it? It could lead to blood pressure issues, high BP and so on, inflammatory conditions of all kinds, infections of all kinds, and tissue irritation of all kinds, because you're producing heat in the body now. If the Mars is positioned like that in your natal chart, always remember when you talk of health and wellness, you always look at the natal chart, which is your physical body. Okay? So it tends to deplete tissue stability. It tends to deplete the cooling fluids, just like sun. It tends to decrease the integrity of the skin. The clinical patterns for Mars excessive might show up as skin eruptions, ulcers of all kinds, liver overload of all kinds, acute fevers of all kinds, injury or surgery related kind of themes of all kinds, sharp pains, sharp shooting pains is Mars, because Mars is a very active planet. The nature is explosive, acute, and inflammatory. Think of it that way. You get a sort of a grip on what we are speaking of essentially. Okay, when we talk of Mars. Now let's speak a bit of Mercury and the attribute it brings. When you think Mercury, think of it, it is the earth element. It is all about skin, all kinds of skin issues. It is all about nerves, the nervous system, the central and the peripheral nervous system, the rational mind and speech, intelligence, the rational intelligence in the person is Mercury. It also stands for hips, throat, arms and hands, the third house. Okay, disorders of the mind and psychology itself. Both Moon and Mercury are similar in this. If you see Moon, it is mind, emotions, food, water, heart, liquids, face, lethargy, drowsiness. So it has got everything to do with disorders or distortions of the mental process. So is Mercury. Mercury is rational mind. Moon is the emotional mind, you might say. So they are counterparts of the same thing. Manas, as it is called in Sanskrit, it is psychology, it is speech. Mercury is the thought process. Mercury is the psychology of writing, of dyslexia, learning disability, autism, skin diseases of all kinds, sense of smell, psychological issues when combined with Moon or aspected by the distortions of Rahu and Ketu. That's what creates all of the stuff with Mercury. In terms of planets, let's see what Mercury brings. Dosha. Now we talk of Vata, Pitta and Kapha. It is Tridoshik, which means it has all three. Remember, Mercury and Moon are very absorbent planets, so they get influenced by wherever they are sitting, the house functions, which we shall see later, as well as whatever is aspecting with it. Let's say Mercury sits with Sun or Mars, which are Pitta, we just covered that. So it becomes very Pitta-like. If it sits with Vata, Saturn, it becomes very Saturnian. If it sits with Jupiter, which is pure Kapha, it becomes very Kapha-like. Okay, so it's an imitating kind of planet, Mercury. The great imitator increases When Mercury is increasing in the chart, when it's very dominant, when it's in its own house, for example, in Virgo or in Gemini, it becomes nervous sensitivity. There's more of Vata there, especially if aspected by Saturn. It increases digestive irregularity. Mercury is very irregular in much the same way as Moon is. So it creates Pitta if it's aspected or conjunct with Mars. Conjunct is where I would lean towards when evaluating from Vata Pitta point of view. It creates skin issues of all kinds. I covered this some degree in the homeopathic research playlist, right? Skin issues, the Sora in homeopathy. Anyway, back to this. It depletes mental clarity when unstable. It depletes the nervous resilience. How strong is your central and peripheral nervous system? The physical nervous system is Mercury when evaluating for wellness conditions. Clinical pattern, it might show up as mixed symptoms, skin diseases, speech and neurological disturbances, dyslexia, autism spectrum themes, because everything to do with speech has to do with Mercury. And if there is 8th Lord, 12th Lord, or Rahu Ketu aspecting it, it creates a distinct tendency of all these distortions, dyslexia, speech problems, or let's say autistic spectrum, or Asperger's syndrome, all those kinds of things. Psychosomatic patterns is Mercury in your chart. Remember this. And especially if it's combined with Moon, it becomes a little deeper. It becomes more tamasic in nature, so to speak. The nature of Mercury is very adaptive, it's unstable, it's mimicry. Mercury is everything mimicry. Mercury expresses the dominant dosha in the environment. What environment are you facing? What environment, not just physically, but I'm saying even in terms of what is going on in your mind. How is your mind evaluating the circumstances of your life? That's the natal chart Mercury for you. Okay. Speaking of Jupiter now, so what would Jupiter stands for? Jupiter is essentially a Kapha planet. Okay. But let's talk of it in generic terms first. Jupiter is all about hearing. What you hear is your wisdom. Jupiter is wisdom. I might be ranting off volumes of Vedic astrology or even the Bhagavad Gita, but what are you hearing? That is Jupiter. How much wisdom you are able to absorb is dependent upon what you hear, not what is really spoken. See the connection in a deeper sense always. Mercury is all about speech. It always stands opposite to Jupiter in a chart. In the houses, isn't it? 3, 6, 9, and 12. So what this means is Mercury might speak, ask questions of all kinds. Questioning is Mercury. Jupiter is the silent answer because it is hearing. It does not speak much. A good teacher will never speak much. Jupiter stands for hearing. In terms of wellness, it stands in the body for fat. All kinds of fatty tissue is Jupiter. It stands for abdomen. It stands for sweets and sweet flavor. All kinds of sweets you eat. Anything sweet tasting is Jupiter. Jupiter is the ether element, similar to Mercury, which was earth element. Jupiter is etheric. That's why it stands for the Akashic records. Jupiter is the lymphatic system and circulatory congestion because it's fatty tissue. Jupiter can be tumors because Jupiter is expansion. Expansion of anything in an organic fashion is Jupiter. Okay, it can lead to tumorous stuff as aspected by Rahu or conjunct with Rahu, for example. Liver complaints of all kinds because it stands for all the organs in your abdomen, stomach, liver, gallbladder, and so on. Ear problems of all kind because it is hearing. All abdominal organs, gallbladder, liver, stomach, etc. are Jupiterian in nature. A big-bellied person, for example, might have a dominant Jupiter with Rahu kind of aspecting. We shall see that later. So from the Prakriti point of view, from the traditional Ayurveda point of view, Jupiter stands for Kapha. Kapha is also interpreted as mucus, but that's a very limited understanding. It increases fatty tissue, which needs to hold in the body. fat has been demonized a lot, but essentially it is not. We all require fatty tissue everywhere. It provides that cushion. Jupiter as a physical manifestation is fatty tissue. It provides cushion to all the bodies, the organs inside, is especially in the abdomen. It stands for all the lymph nodes. The lymph circulatory system is Jupiter. If it's more in nature, then it increases the lymph functioning. It increases the growth tendency. Jupiter is responsible for cellular regeneration and growth. That is what sustains you. It is responsible for tumor formation if excessive. Very big caveat there. Like I said, if it is aspected or conjunct Rahu, then it creates that abnormal growth. Otherwise, not. Otherwise, growth is needed, of course. It creates cravings for sweets, which is very dominant in our civilization 2026, isn't it? It depletes the digestive sharpness because Jupiter is kapha. Jupiter is a little slow. Jupiter is a little calm in nature. You do need the fatty tissue. You do need to be calm. But excessive calmness in the abdomen, let's say in the Jupiter, let's say Jupiter in the fifth house or first house or ninth house aspecting that particular house of fifth house, will slow down your digestion. You might get a big belly. Okay. It decreases the efficiency of Jatra Agni or the fire in the stomach as it is called in Ayurveda. Okay, Jatra Agni. Jatra means your stomach. It can decrease that if there is way too much fat. Fat is necessary, but anything in excess is not needed because what are we trying to do here? We are trying to balance Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. So the clinical pattern which shows up in Jupiter might be obesity. There you go. All obesity, excessive Jupiter functioning in some way. Okay? Because Jupiter is responsible for all the organs in your abdomen. Liver congestion of all kinds. Liver congestion is once again Jupiter. It's again the abdominal organ. Abdominal heaviness of all kinds. Lymphatic stagnation. That can also be Jupiter. That kind of condition. Circulatory congestion, all kinds of lymphatic circulatory congestion is Jupiter. Blood would become Mars. Okay, when Mars and Jupiter are working in certain pattern in your natal chart, it might create both lymphatic and blood circulation issues. Right? The Kapha aspect of Jupiter is now playing with Mars. And this is where the strength and the weakness of the planet would play in. Suppose Jupiter is more strong. Just giving you a random example. Jupiter is more strong and it is increasing the Kapha factor. Mars is weak, let's say Mars in Cancer, but it is weak. Therefore, it is decreasing the Pitta factor. Therefore, it is increasing the Kapha. Pitta is decreased, Kapha is increased. Therefore, it creates congestion, what we were speaking of. Keep these kind of rules and work with it. Check your natal chart as we speak. So, the nature of Jupiter is expansive, accumulative. Its expansion, growth, and accumulation, which is basic nature of the biology, isn't it? Jupiter imbalances growth without regulation. So this is the core of it. So Jupiter, remember always the essential components. We shall see much more later as we go along to the houses and how that affects different parts of the wellness of the human being.